With all the uncertainty in the world right now, do we go gold? Do we go silver? Is there something else? Is the US dollar in trouble? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you if you want your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to, because you have enough passive income coming in to cover all your needs. But you're not just doing it to get rich. You're doing it because you want to live a rich life, because as you're able to expand your stewardship, you're able to bless the lives of those around you. And that is the ripple effect I'm here to create with you guys today. I appreciate you so much for tuning in, binging, sharing these episodes. Some of you guys have been reaching out that I know have been following us for more than 10 years. So a special shout out to those of you guys that are just our diehard followers. You know, we love you, whoever you are. Hey, if you do love us, by the way, be sure to not just like this video, but be sure to also share this with other people as well. Who can actually benefit from the things that we're teaching right now? Who needs this? I can guarantee somebody you love does. Be sure to share the show today. All right, guys, so I'm bringing on a special guest today, David Morgan. Now, if you guys know this, or maybe you don't know this, but I get pitched guests literally 5 to 10 times a day. I mean, I get so many people. But when I saw David Morgan, I had to stop, because the truth is this, is that David Morgan is one of the most renowned people when it talks about really what's really going on. What's going on with the value of our dollar? Is it in trouble or not? What about other alternative investments? What about things like gold and silver and commodities? What about digital currencies? All these things that I know a lot of you have questions on. What's really coming up? This guy is the foregoing expert on this. He's had over 4 decades of experience in this regard. He also has the Morgan Report that he publishes as well, that you guys are welcome to follow. And of course, guys, he's been featured in documentaries and everything else talking about this. And my big question today is what's the future going to hold right now? What's happening? What is the government and others not telling us right now? That's what David's going to reveal on our podcast today. So David, welcome to our show.
Oh, Chris, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Absolutely. So you got to give us some more backstory on this. I mean, you've had obviously, 40 years in this arena, but what got you down this little rabbit hole that now has kind of got you, like you said, you're not necessarily like a huge gold fanatic or anything like that, but obviously like you've gotten to be known as a contrarian. So what got you down this path?
Yeah, actually, it started when I was an 11-year-old kid. 11 years of age, the coin has changed in the United States, where we were going from 90% silver coins, dimes, quarters, and halves
Uh-huh.
to what I call the Johnson slugs under the Johnson administration. I was picking up 25 cents a week allowance from my father, and I noticed the coinage change, and I thought, this is weird. So I really was fascinated about money at an early age. And so I started exploring it on my own, not really at age 11 per se, but as I got a little older, and I found out how the system really worked with fractional reserve banking and how money's printed and all of that kind of thing. So it actually put me kind of on a quest. I kind of diverted somewhat, although always interested in money, and I actually ended up in the aircraft industry after college, but that's another story for another day. But I've just been fascinated with markets and the idea of what I call the American system, where we could pool our money and come up with a new idea and innovate something that helps society at large. And yet it's a paradox, because we get richer or better off, and at the same time we're helping others to do the same thing. So I always looked at the stock market as investing in companies and becoming a way to really help each other.
Hmm, interesting. And so how did you start to diverge? I mean, because obviously like mainstream media is shoving, just stocks down your throat. They're telling you to do this, do that. It's always the same vanilla advice. What is it that got you to start breaking away from that mold?
Well, I started looking at it on my own, as I said, and then early on in my aircraft career, I was a crew member on the B-1 bomber,
Mhm.
and me and the test pilot and the co-pilot were sitting in the truck on the flight line, and chief pilot pulled out this newsletter and he started reading to the other guy. And I'm in the back seat. I'm like in my early 20s,
Mhm.
with my helmet on, all ready to go, and just don't being very, very uptight because I don't want to mess anything up. It's my first job. It's a great job. So he starts reading this financial newsletter, and I'm all ears, because this is stuff I've already looked into on my own. And here's a guy that I admire, and is mid 50s. It's, world renowned test pilot. And what? And so he got done, and being, somewhat assertive, I asked him after we did the engine runs, who is it? Where is it? How do you get this newsletter, and on and on. So once I started reading these newsletter, I sent off, paid the money, got the newsletter, started subscribing. And I knew at that time that's really my heart of hearts, what I really wanted to do for a living. And obviously I've been doing that for over 25 years now. But that kind of set me on the path that I'm not the only one thinking this way. There's others, and these guys are well off, well known, and they want to do well with their money, and they're talking about all this alternative stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really a big thing. So I don't tell that story very often, but you triggered it. I think
Not
we're
at
good.
all.
So we got to, what got me rolling. And that's a story I love telling, but I haven't thought of it in years. But really, I had all this personal conviction, but God, I'm sure I got my career job, and here are the gods, saying this stuff, and they're thinking outside the box. So that just solidified my own thinking at the time, and I kind of took off from then on.
Yeah. Well, and I know it's really important. We teach our people that kind of have more brain on type investing, more independent thinking. What would you recommend to somebody who's, maybe they've got the news and the media on, or whatever, like they're trying to get information from different sources, especially nowadays. I mean, information is everywhere. How does somebody really distinguish between reality and just what's maybe like financial dogma?
That is probably the toughest one going. It really is difficult. I would say, obviously, there's alternative media. One thing I do for the news is I use different localities. So, like, whether you like them or not, Russia, uh, Europe, South Africa actually puts out some pretty interesting news that's uh, more realistic, let's say.
Hmm.
But I think the main thing is to kind of do a deeper dive on, what Operation Mockingbird is all about, how the American people are allowed to be propagandized or lied to, and it's legal. And so, truth, justice, and the American way has kind of gone by the wayside, in my opinion. I'm
Yeah.
not here to argue with anybody, but really, you've got to ascertain and use discernment, because a lot of stuff is just propaganda. It's truthful, but slanted. And now, with the AI becoming more and more prominent, what you get fed keeps you in your own bubble. So
Yes.
you keep getting reinforced that left is better than the right, or right is better than the left. And it's a divide and conquer, because we're all human, no matter what our nationality, where we're located. We all bleed the same. And we basically have the same ideals. We basically want to be left alone and raise our families and live in peace.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, that's not the power trip at the top. So I would say look for alternatives, listen to people like me and others like me, and then make up your own mind, because all of us are at a disadvantage of knowing what I would consider the absolute or total truth. But you can get glimpses, and your worldview is important, because so much emphasis is put on stuff outside of ourselves. Meaning, if I get the right car, the right job, the right house, the right portfolio, this amount of gold, then
Hmm.
I'm going to get there. And that's not what it's about. It's really about becoming a millionaire or a multimillionaire. It's more about what you learn on that path than actually the achievement of the goal. It's the journey you should enjoy.
That's so true. I find fascinating that you said like South Africa or Russia for news sources. I know some people said BBC, because they say that sometimes they can be more unbiased, but those are interesting sources. I would never expected Russia to be on the list of, where you can actually get truthful news, right? Because from what we
Well, I'm not
hear,
saying truthful but more truthful. Sorry if I interrupted, but you
yeah,
do get a different look. Looking through their eyes. I look at the left a lot, and I'm not on the right. I'm more libertarian than anything, but I hate to be labeled.
uh-huh,
But I am objective. That's how you're taught to think as an engineer. You got to
yeah,
look at all the facts, and that's hard to get to. What are the facts? Because AI can make up something with Donald Trump speaking with his image and his voice and be utter nonsense, and
yeah,
you can't tell it from a real speech through your computer. And that's
true.
something to really be concerned about. But yeah, that's one of the ways I do it, just looking at these different sources. The South African source I stumbled upon, and this guy knew something really deep, not only in the mining sector, but like the electrical problem and the apartheid thing getting worse, and all the stuff that I knew was true because I have friends from South Africa, because that's such a big mining area.
Yeah,
So it was reinforcing what I knew firsthand from people that live there. And I go, wow, this is a good source. And I marked it and used it ever since.
Oh, fascinating. Well, let's talk about like currencies and things like that because I know that's really your specialty. And I know the big thing that I hear from a lot of people are saying U.S. dollar is going to be gone in a couple of years. Like it's going to be toast. It's not going to no longer be on the global scale. It's no longer going to be kind of the world standard. It's going to be gone. What are your views on that?
Well, I do think that we're in a currency crisis that's rolling along slowly. There's three words that come to mind, and I use it almost every interview, and that is all fiat fails. So we're in a global fiat currency system based primarily on the US dollar, and if it fails, then basically everything else does.
Yeah.
And failure does not mean that things stop. In a very large financial collapse or crisis, those words scare people, as they probably should, but really, in a way, nothing changes from the aspect that all the wealth stays in place. So, a
Hmm.
financial crisis means that all the real estate, all the agriculture, all the gas and oil fields, all the schools, churches, buildings, they're all there. But what
Yeah.
happens is there's a huge shift in ownership. So, in some financial crises, the prices are so over leveraged that the debtors cannot service the debt. The bond market reprices things. So now instead of average house costing 440,000 in the United States, it's now 220,000 for an
Yeah.
example. So it's cut in half. So the house didn't go away. But in a financial collapse, people that are over leveraged get assets that are on leverage taken away or can't afford the payment or whatever. People that have cash can go ahead and buy them up. Now, that's an example. We have two
Mhm.
paths, generally speaking. One is a debt liquidating depression, which I just outlined, and the other is a hyperinflationary depression, where we go the route of Zimbabwe, where the currency just becomes worthless and no one wants to use it. I don't think that will happen with the US dollar. I think we're more likely to some combination where we get some assets that are on leverage that really come down in price and
Mhm.
other assets that are actually needed, such as probably the agricultural commodities, because we all have to eat. Those type of commodities going up. So you could have a situation where things that we need cost more and things that are on leverage like car loans, student loans, obviously the real estate market, the leverage in the stock market. There's $1 trillion on margin right now, all
Right.
come down. So it's a repricing kind of mother nature in a way, resettling things on, let's say, a more realistic scale for everybody. Some
Mhm.
will win, some will lose. And generally speaking, it is, in a way, it's a good thing from my perspective, study monetary history, but it does change the perspective of everybody about money and how it works.
Yeah, I know like a lot of times we talk about the everything bubble, right? You know, because just everything went in the last 5 years, especially became very, very highly valued, maybe overvalued in some places. You know, and what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing that if it's a real asset, if it's something that's tangible, that's usable, that keeps the value. But if it doesn't, there could be an actual deflation of sorts.
Right. Yeah, to summarize that, I mean, cash flow versus capital gains in the precious metals. Okay. Most people think that gold and silver are dead assets because they just sit there in a vault collecting dust. However, there are other ways to invest, and that is like in royalty of streaming companies, which you feature in the Morgan report. And select mining equities can give you cash flow. I bought Pan American at 250 a share. It's got a very modest dividend, but now the stock is about 10 times higher. So my actual cash flow on my initial investment is 10% a year. That's a pretty good
Mhm.
return on a stock I've held for a long time. And then what you've got to consider is what do you lose when the currency depreciates? As we talked off air before we started, I looked at the compounded annual growth rate of three major investment classes: gold, real estate, and the stock market. And the compounded annual growth rate over the 25 years, I picked the starting point I wanted, is about 10% for gold, 8% for the S&P 500, and 5% for real estate. And
Right.
I preach balance. I think you need maybe 10% in the precious metals divided between real metal and the equity sector that I outlined with top tier cash rich, cash flowing companies that provide dividends. And then you go from there. So you got 90% to put in the real estate, the stock market, bond market, private equity, whatever. I'm a big contrarian, as we talked about. I think there are ways to invest in private placements, especially the mining sector. And many of these, if you're an accredited investor, can go extremely well for you, but not all of them do. So I have a methodology that's been proven over the years that if you take your account in the private placement memorandums and you judiciously invest, and I vet these things for our members, then you're going to lose on a couple. You're going to make 300-400% on maybe five of them, and maybe two of them will give you a 10, 20, 30 bagger. So, but you have to use the strategy. You can't just say, oh, David, you like it, you trust it, and and bet the farm on that. No, you have to bet, make even bets, probably five at least, if not 10. And that strategy has paid off for us. In fact, that's how the billionaire class in the mining sector actually made so much money. They never bought a junior mining company. They financed junior mining companies, and that's how they became so wealthy.
If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now. Right. What do you see as a common myth that people buy into that you have to unwind or help get people past it in order to kind of bridge this gap, this knowledge gap?
There's so many. The one that comes to head and heart is that it's really, really hard to do it. It isn't. It isn't that difficult. First, you have to have a good understanding of how the system works. And then what you got to do is kind of put on your Buffett hat for a minute and say, well, what are the biggest growth factors? Well, the population's growing, which means, more demand for Coca-Cola, more demand for housing, more demand for See's candies. All these things is invested in.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the contrarian perspective, what's growing? The money supply continues to grow and grow and grow, which means a debasement of the currency worldwide. So how do you protect yourself? I mean, when we started the Morgan Report, it was right around the bottom of the gold market roughly 25 years ago. Gold was $252 an ounce. Today it's $3,300 an ounce. That's a much larger number. It's more than a 10 bagger. But gold didn't change. That ounce of gold from the year 2000 to now is the same ounce of gold. So what changed? Well, the currency depreciated so much that the paper price of gold went up that many fold. And that's what you need to do with part of your portfolio. And then if you can get into situations, which, by the way, if I don't want to forget, Chris, I've set a special URL for your viewers and listeners. And it's themorganreport.com/money. I know it's money ripples. I just use the word money. So it's themorganreport.com/MONEY. It's a special landing page, and you can have a 15-minute conversation with me for free. And there are a couple ways to invest in the precious metals and get a return in precious metals, but I don't have time to do that right now. And hopefully I answered that question.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, and that's one thing I know that everybody's kind of looked to the future. Do you really think that we could, I mean, obviously there's a devaluation of the currency. We're seeing it happen. What's your view of the feds that they say they want to control inflation, but then they keep pumping more money? Like I've noticed the money supply, the M2 money supply keeps going up. What's your view on that?
Yeah, my view is it's going to end. The bankers know it. They're very smart, and they're looking for an exit. And the exit basically is the CBDC. It doesn't necessarily have to be a central bank digital currency, but we're moving into a digital world more and more. Everything is going to be tokenized. At least that's their plan. And so we're going to have a new system. And the new system will be much like we have now, except it'll probably go cashless at some point. And you're going to have to move the platform from what you're used to using now into a system where you have a tokenized system. So there'll be, much less cash, which is pretty much the way it is now anyway. I mean, both my daughters are millennials. They never carry cash with them. I do, but I'm an old guy. So it will be centralized perhaps with different entities such as a JP Morgan, one of the biggest banks in the US, or maybe an Amazon. And there will be probably at the beginning a competing currency, meeting or competing tokenization. So you could have an Amazon token, JP Morgan token, whatever, but they'll all be cleared the same way. And eventually it will kind of neck down into probably one universal token like the smart or stable coins like the USDC or USDT, where you have everything goes to the stable coin. So I think I'm pretty certain that's the direction we're going. So we will have a rough spot as the transition occurs, but it's already being planned. There's no doubt about that. How easily we'll make it through that transition remains to be determined. But they're conditioning us with fact and propaganda all the time about the safety and who's who in the zoo. In other words, you have to have a digital ID, so we make sure that it's you. And a digital ID, basically, you are your identification. It's your DNA, it's your iris scan, it's that type of thing. So the system is moving more into that science fiction mode where we are basically alerted to a system that's never been ventured into before, and it is almost sci-fi world coming to life very soon.
How long do you think it'll take to implement something like that?
I think we're about 2 years away. I mean,
Wow.
Sam Altman's already done the world view, whatever it's called, it's world something, where you look into that big globe with your
Mhm.
iris, with your eye, and it takes an iris picture and it gives you some tokens. And
Mhm.
I don't know how many thousands of people have already done that, but these things start kind of slowly and they're kind of innocuous. And people think, oh, it's fun. I'll put my eyeball in there, but they've got you now. I mean,
Mhm.
you're you. Your iris is unique, just like your fingerprint or your DNA or what have you. So to get it implemented, it'll probably take a crisis of some type, maybe a cyber attack on the banking system or a
Mm.
blackout or, oh, who knows? I think a cyber attack is most likely, but it could be
Could
a
be
number of
intentional.
things. And they'll come up with an alternative that says, in order to secure your financial future, now that we've lost your, whatever, we've resurrected your bank account, but you couldn't access it for 3 days or whatever takes place. And here's our new system, our foolproof system. You've got, 30 days to implement it. If you do so, you get an extra 1,000 tokens. If you're 60 days, we're going to give you 500 tokens. And if you're at the limit of 90 days from now to get registered with the new system, you're in or you're out. I mean, I'm making all this, I'm not making it up. I've thought this through. I've written about it. I've lectured about it.
Yeah.
And most of it comes from the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements, the Bankers Bank, which is the top of the pyramid as far as the banking cartel that we know of exists. And this is an outline from them. I've added some into it, but primarily they've outlined it on their website. I gave this lecture about the new monetary system at the 50th anniversary of the gold show in New Orleans, probably the foremost gold show from all time. I mean, in recent times.
Yeah. Do you think for the valuation of the dollar, this is a good thing or a bad thing? Could this actually accelerate the value of the fiat currency devaluing?
I'm all for honesty. I mean, my mission statement is to teach and empower people to understand the benefits of an honest financial system.
Hmm.
So if we're truthful about the dollar's real value is, instead of having the inordinate privilege of being able to print money and pass the inflation on to other countries, and we send them pieces of paper and they send us real goods, I think that's coming to an end as I've outlined. And I think I'm for fairness. And so the dollar is probably overvalued, as I just indicated. And so wherever it ends up, I think as long as it's commensurate with, our energy, our workforce, what we produce versus other countries, I think that's a good place to start over. Now, whether or not that can be actually achieved or not, that remains to be determined. But going back to a financial collapse, or let's say a readjustment, like we really had in 2008. I mean, that was really kind of the beginning of the end. It's
Hmm.
been papered over ever since, but the truth is still there. In other words, we were overvalued and it needed to be repriced, and it just hasn't occurred yet. But I think the next repricing will be a point where the bankers come in and do what I've outlined, some type of new system.
And people that might have like Bitcoin and other stuff, and maybe they have gold and silver. I mean, what's ways they can protect themselves in case of
Yeah,
that?
you need assets that are hard assets in a financial readjustment. So that would be real estate.
Mhm.
But I would say, non-levers is the best. Gold and silver, obviously. I think some cryptos will do better than others. I'm not a huge fan, but I'm a free market thinker. So certainly, if you think crypto's the way to go, I would balance. I think those three. Anything that's a hard asset, I mean, a lumber yard, for example, would be good if it's all paid for, no
Mm,
leverage.
yeah,
Oil would be great, but it's hard to store. So anything in the
right.
commodity sector, but basically the top of the commodity sector are the money metals. And so
Yeah.
that's why they've been valued so much throughout history because they don't rot, they store easily, they're fungible, they all look alike, they can be divided. So there's a lot of aspects of the money metals that are at the top of the commodity sector. Also, thinking ahead, what is going to be needed in the new transition? AI is going to take a lot of jobs, but who's going to fix the plumbing? Some of the trades will
Hmm.
flourish. I mean, a robot eventually may be able to come in and do the plumbing. But right now, even with a lot of AI now, it's going to take a human being that knows how, electrician, a plumber, mechanics, that type of thing.
Real
And
hands-on skills.
and yeah, exactly. And I think self-sufficiency is something that we need more of as far as the younger generation is concerned. I mean, jack of all trades, master of none comes to mind. Not that you
Mhm.
need to know everything, but just the basics on home repair, um, perhaps growing an herb garden, something as simple as that. But I think we need to get less dependent on technology and more dependent on humanity.
So true. So true. Well, David, this has been very valuable. I really appreciate it today. And you said if they want to get the Morgan reports, morganreport.com/money, is that right?
That's correct. Morganreport.com/money. I've got three gifts. I've got one with an outline for you, kind of what we talked about. One on a movie called The Four Horsemen. And the last one is a 15-minute free consultation. No obligation. I'm here to help people. Yeah, I need to make a living and I'm fine. But there may be people that are looking for cash flow, and there's a couple ways to do it. One of my favorites is what I teach our members, and that's to write covered calls on top tier mining companies.
Mm,
And if you do that, you can average about 17% a year, which beats
wow.
the heck out of a T bill right now. And it's backed by, let's say, a gold stock. So it's a
Yeah,
good way to go in this sector.
that's excellent. Oh man, that's great. Well, anybody who wants to definitely check that out, be sure to go visit that website today. We'll also put in the show notes in case you're driving. We don't want you to die and crash. So be sure to check that out. David, final question for you, really quick. We talk about creating a ripple effect in people's lives. What do you feel is your ripple effect you're here to create on this planet?
I think it's all about freedom. I mean, I wrote an essay about a month and a half ago. When you lie about money, money dies. In other words, if you don't speak the truth about freedom and free money, where people have control, it's kind of the ownership of money idea, where you have a silver coin and a gold coin. Not that we have to do that exactly, but the idea is sound. When you have control over your money, you have much more freedom than if someone else controls your money, which is the way we've gone in the last 50 years when we left the Bretton Woods system. And now the new system that's being proposed that we discussed thoroughly on your show, Chris, is more control of them. We want freedom. We don't want control.
So agree. No, if you don't have control, you don't have freedom. That's something I say all the time. So well, appreciate your time, David. This has been awesome. Everybody else, be sure to check out the David check out. I was gonna say the David report, but that'd be good. No, be sure to check out the Morgan report. Like I said, the links in the show notes here. But guys, remember you can learn about this stuff all day long, and he's giving great advice. But until you do something, your life won't change. So make sure you go out and make it a wonderful and prosperous week. And we'll talk to you later.